Peace and blessings, family. You have joined another episode of Just Us. Sorry. You have joined another episode of Sis We Need to Talk. I'm sorry. I think I'm coming down with a flu or something. My brain ain't working right today. But yes, and you are here with me, your host, Tisha Hillman. I have not been here in quite some time. So special shout out to attorney Talib Saber for stepping in for me during one of the weeks that I was out. Unfortunately, sometimes they schedule, court dates on Mondays. So here I am, folks. But thank you so much for everybody here at WBGR holding down the fort, and for attorney Talib Saber. I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation that he brought to you guys about R. Kelly and some of the issues around the treatment of women. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. And actually, our topic today is let's talk about sex. Because I know that all of y'all grown folks out there like sex. Well, hopefully you like sex. But before we actually get into sex, I want to talk about Tisha's trending topics, or the 3 T's. So, as you guys know, today marks the first day that the federal government workers who were on furlough have been able to return to work. So shout out to all the federal government workers who, the 800,000 people, can you guys believe that? 800,000 people were out of work for over a month and did not receive pay. And I don't know if you guys saw any of the videos and things like that, where there were people that went to Congress, and that, regular citizens crying and begging because they were not able to be paid. Now, here's what that taught me. First and foremost, we live in the wealthiest nation. The wealthiest nation, but yet the average person cannot survive 2 weeks. Certainly, they have a hard time after a month of not being paid. And that says a lot, because remember, we have, I think it's like 25 people that control literally all of the wealth in our country is controlled by about 25 people. And five or less than 10, I should say, because I don't know if it's exactly 5, but less than 10 of those people are what we call the super wealthy, the super elite, who control everything. And so this isn't a good place to be in when the people that are actually producing the income, because remember, corporations don't actually create jobs per se. Because if today everyone that works for a corporation did not go to work, that corporation would go bankrupt. Because it's the people that is the energy. It's the people that is the currency, right? Think about it. Money and currency are called the same thing. We've talked about that repeatedly on this show, because I want you guys to really understand what's happening. And what's happening is that they flipped things upside down and made people believe that they are where the power actually lies. They're only where the power lies because that's the power we've given them. But if we said tomorrow, no more, that it's unacceptable for almost 1 million people to be out of work because you're upset, because one person who controls all of this became upset because he didn't get a wall that he wanted to build, a symbol of division in this country. And also, I do think it's for other reasons, but simply a symbol of division. He didn't get that, so he's pissed off. He puts almost 1 million people out of work. Then you have senators like, hey, I don't understand. Why do these people have to go to, food pantries? Now, folks, understand the level of callous that it takes to say to somebody who is literally out of work, telling you that they're going to lose their cars, their homes, whatever the case may be, and they don't have money for food, telling them, I have no idea why you're going to a food pantry. And for some reason, the super wealthy, and just simply the wealthy, most of whom cannot comprehend what it's like to not have money all the time. However, most of us can comprehend exactly what that feels like and exactly what that looks like. And so maybe it's time we start reevaluating where the power actually lies and who we give our power to. But before I get on before I go on a tangent, if you were furloughed, and you still need help, whether that be with gas, food, clothing, whatever it is, you can send me an email directly at Tisha, Tisha, at returntomayat.com. And that's returntomayat.com. And that's MAAT.com. We may be able to directly assist you, or if not, we can certainly refer you to someone who can. And secondly, if you find yourself in Maryland, first and foremost, and during the furlough you found yourself needing some legal assistance and you still need that assistance, you can contact the law office of Tisha S. Hillman at 301-744-7996. Be sure to like us on Facebook at T.S. Hillman Law, and also on Twitter and Instagram. Now, yesterday, I don't know if you guys follow, like, young rappers and stuff like that. I don't really follow them, but I have young nephews. And so they listen to this music or whatever. And it's not really my cup of tea, but I try to be fair, and as my friend always says, to give it a fair hearing. Because it is important to know what it is that our kids are listening to, what the message is that's being presented, and what energy or emotion is being invoked in our children when they listen to this music. So a young rapper, I think he was like 20 years old, by the name of J-Mo Sama, in Florida, was murdered yesterday. Now, according to my nephew, and I refer to that as word on the street because I don't know. I have no idea. But according to my nephew, I think he said this was the fourth young man that was killed within the last 7 days. When he told me that, it broke my heart. And the reason being is because I just wonder, when are we going to get tired of losing our babies? When are we going to get tired of losing our children? Because think about it like this. Now, I have no problem with my age because, you're only as young or as old as you feel. I'm 42 years old. So when I was in high school, we were the generation of kids who were having all the kids, right? We were that generation where it's like, oh, there's a teenage pregnancy epidemic. It slowed down tremendously since that time, but we were that generation. So if you think about it, my friends have kids that are my nephew's age, 20 years old, 19, 18, right? The kids that we're talking about that are being murdered by other black kids or black men are our children. So what I say to my generation, I guess we're considered Gen X, what I say to the Gen Xers, what the hell are we doing? What are we doing? Because if our babies hate themselves so much when they look in the mirror and they see their reflection or fail to see their reflection in another young black man, what is it that we have done to fail them? Because here's the thing, our children didn't become who they are on their own, because no one does, right? It takes a village. And so what I say to my village is, what have we done? What have we done? Because to know that my 12-year-old nephew went to a funeral of someone around his age that was murdered is heartbreaking. But RIP t-shirts, GoFundMe pages to pay for funerals. It's so common in our community that we think it's normal. Like, we really think this behavior is normal, and I can assure you that it's not. This is not normal for an entire generation of young black people to be murdered at the hands of other young black people, folks. What are we going to do to change it? Because this is a problem that we created. Make no mistake about it. We had a hand in this. Because something I always say on the show is what you call a thing matters, right? So if I imagine hearing your entire life, you don't matter. I don't need you. You ain't nothing but a nigga. You're a bitch. You a hoe. You're stupid. You so black. You so ugly. You just like your daddy. He wasn't nothing. You ain't gonna be nothing, right? Imagine hearing that every single day in your house. And you walk outside your house and you hear that in your community. And you walk outside of your community and you see that being portrayed on a national scale for everybody that looks like you. What type of message do you think that's sending to our young black men? Let's not forget the generation before that was told, okay, we will give you public assistance if you kick that man out of your house. Women, the government will take care of you so long as there's no man in your house to help you raise those children. Do you really think that was not intentional? Because generation after generation after generation, when you look at it, what I've seen is there's always been a push to ensure not only that black women do not procreate as rapidly, by a number of ways, but also that we never actually understand or see or appreciate our own value, and we never appreciate the value in those who look like us, including our men. And so we internalize all of this stuff, right? All of these things, it lives within our DNA. And, science has found that trauma alters your DNA. This is why they prescribe things like medications and stuff like that, because they always say trauma alters your brain chemistry. And folks, that is absolutely true. Now, I don't subscribe to medications, but I do understand that trauma actually changes your DNA. And so if we are subjecting our babies to trauma, if we are subjecting them to toxic relationships with men who ain't their fathers, who beat us in their presence, or just in general, who see us struggling all the time, we have to understand that that has an impact on them. And so when I think of the culmination of events that got us to this place where I'm hearing stories in my home state of Florida of young black men literally just going up to a car and shooting other young black men just cause. We gotta really understand that it's not just them, because somebody raised them, and those somebodies are us. And if it's not us directly, it's our community. It's us by extension, because we are all the same. And I don't want to dwell on this too far, because it's so emotionally taxing. But I want to express this with the seriousness that it deserves. Because we cannot refer to our people as thugs and gangsters and criminals and no good and all these kinds of things, and expect them to not internalize that behavior, to not internalize that. And we got to hold music responsible. And what I mean by that is, I know that we can't necessarily, censor everything that our kids watch. But there are things that we can do when they're younger, because once they're this age, it's, it is what it is. But if if you follow the Bible, right? The Bible says, you train up a child in the way that he should go, and he will not stray. And what I interpret that to mean is, if you give the children the foundation when they're young, these are not the problems you'll have when they get older. And the key is consistently. You can't just do it on Sundays or on Saturdays or what day you choose to worship, but it's really about instilling these principles in the lives of our babies every single day and being consistent. Because only then will we be able to see a difference in the younger generation, because we've taught them better. Because, they always say, when you know better, you do better. And so if they're not doing better, do they actually know better? And if they don't know better, why don't they know better? And finally, when it comes to my trending topics, I know this has gone on for a while, but it's just, it's so, it's so much. So, as you guys know, Talib was talking about R. Kelly and some of the issues surrounding that. So apparently now the FBI is investigating R. Kelly for um, basically flying a young girl across country in 2015. Now, I didn't watch the documentary Surviving R. Kelly, and I refuse to do so. But I do. I feel like I understand what happened from all of the posts and things like that I've read the on the documentary. But apparently, one of the young girls who was in the video or in the documentary, she is the subject or the victim who is the subject of the FBI investigation. So I don't know. We'll see. But here's the thing. Just like I just said, we got to take responsibility in the same way. If you have children that have been sexually assaulted, and a lot of us have, and I said this before on the show, 9 out of 10 of my close friends, including myself, were raped and or sexually abused as young children. That should tell you how high the numbers actually are. And so what I'm saying to you is this. If you refuse to stop listening to a man that we know, forget the BS that we tell ourselves as black people, because Lord have mercy, we can make some excuses. Stop it. Stop it. We have a problem. And until we acknowledge that we have a problem, we're never going to fix it. Because if we can't agree as a community that this behavior is wrong, period, full stop. There's no exceptions. There's no nothing. If we are literally arguing about whether or not multiple allegations that we know about from the time we were kids, from the time I was in high school listening to R. Kelly, I knew about his marriage to Aaliyah. And so if we cannot acknowledge that behavior is wrong, what message are we sending to our kids who are being abused by people like that? As long as you make good music, it's okay. As long as you keep, entertaining me, it doesn't matter what you do to harm our people. Is that where we are? Is that what we're doing? If it is, then okay. But understand the consequences that you get as a result of that. But if it's not, then we got to explore reasons why that is and then work to change those things, folks. But before I go on to talking about sex, I know I talked about a lot of heavy stuff, but now I'm going to get deep. First I get heavy, then I get deep. Anyway, before I get deep, we're going to take a brief commercial break, and we will be right back to talk about sex. Welcome back to Sis We Need to Talk. This segment is brought to you by the Law Office of Tisha S. Hillman. If you need an attorney in Maryland in the areas of family law, criminal law, and or personal injury, be sure to reach out to the Law Office of Tisha S. Hillman. They are located in Largo, Maryland. Phone number is 301-744-7996. I guarantee you will never have a more zealous legal advocate on your side. So, before we took our brief break, we were talking about sex. And the reason I want to talk about sex is because we don't understand sometimes, or we can miss the understanding of how special and important it's supposed to be. Because, we're human, and, we have animalistic tendencies from time to time, right? And so we can get so caught up in the pleasure of it that we miss the procreation part of it, right? We can miss the sacred aspect of it. Both men and women, but I'm talking to my sisters now because I want us to understand that we are in fact sacred beings. So me and my homegirl started reading this book. It's called The Sacred Woman by Queen Afua. And sisters, when I tell you, if you have not started reading this book or if you've never heard of it, it is an incredible, painful, enlightening, invigorating experience. That's what it is. It's an experience. And so essentially, um, it's the book is exactly what it says it is. It's about the sacred woman and helping us to recapture that. And so I just wanted to highlight for you guys some of the things, not only that I've learned through, just starting to read this book, but also some of the other things that I've been able to learn along the way, because I believe that it's always about spreading knowledge and wisdom to our people in order to enlighten our people, because it does not matter if I have knowledge or if I am enlightened if I can't share that light with anyone else and help them to be enlightened. Um, but did you know that your body is truly, truly sacred? If you look at any religious text, whether it be the Christian Bible, whether it be any other spiritual, I don't know too much about a whole bunch of religions in depth, but I do know that the basic premise is essentially the same. And many, if not all of them, talk about your body being a temple. And of course, temples are the places where only the special people can go into the temples to worship, right? Um, your body is that temple. And as a woman, understand how sacred you are. As a black woman, understand how sacred you are. So when we talk about black girl magic, like I say all the time on this show, we are magical people. We are damn unicorns. Understand that, sisters. Embrace that. Not in an arrogant sort of way, but in a I understand who I am and I love everything about myself. But also understanding that in all of us, there's good, there's bad, there's evil, there's good. I mean, it is what it is. We are all of that. But sacred, if you understand what it means, sacred means connected to God, connected with God or the gods, or dedicated to a religious purpose and so deserving veneration. That is who you are. That is who you are. Like, sometimes I think we say these things and we don't really think about what it is that we're saying. And if you believe in any sort of religion, they all essentially say your body is sacred, your temple is sacred. And I really believe that we're talking here about the woman being sacred, doubly so, right? Because it's about what goes into her womb, into her universe, into her earth. And so there are photos that I wanted to show you guys. If you look here at the Ankh, and if you are familiar with what the Ankh actually is, the Ankh is an ancient Kemetic symbol that you can find it being held in the hands or whatever of the gods and goddesses, that represents eternal life, because the Ankh represents the womb. And so if you see here, I mean, if you look at it, you see exactly what it is. The Ankh represents the womb because it is the key. It is literally the key to eternal life, because you cannot procreate to create in advance, right? You cannot procreate without a woman, without her womb, without the womb man, right? You cannot do it. And so understand what that means. And so once the photo comes up, I'll show you guys again. But as you can see here, you have, I think this is, I can't remember who's represented by the head of the bird here. But I'm not, sorry guys, I'm waiting for the other photo to come up. But essentially, when you look at the womb, right? It is the womb of life. It's the womb of mankind. It's how we got here, and it's essentially how we leave, right? And so basically, as you go up into the womb, right? And you think, I think I showed you guys before last time, the photos of the sky goddess Nut, and the earth god Geb, right? And it's a picture of Geb essentially. It looks like his penis is erect and she's over the sky on top of him. And so it's all about symbolism. It's not this perverse thing or whatever. It's just that we've been made to interpret sex as something nasty and filthy and whatever, and not understanding the sacredness of what it is. But as the male phallus goes up into the womb, it has the ability to create life in the eggs, right? Because eggs have to be fertilized in order to bring life. And how do eggs get fertilized? They plant, a seed is planted. And think about it. As the seed is planted, like I told you guys before, what type of seed are you allowing to be planted in your womb? Because if you understand that your womb is a sacred place, you will treat it as such. You will understand that anything that goes into your womb has the ability to create life, right? Good, bad, or otherwise, it has the ability to create life. Because anything that is planted will grow if it is fertilized. So this is where I was talking earlier about words and the language that we use, things like that. Those are seeds that are planted into the psyche of our people. And then you water it every single day by reinforcing that, through the community, through, the external forces, all of these things. And so that seed that's been planted grows. In the same way, your womb, it grows if it's planted. And so if you look here, the portal of life, as the seed goes up, and then there's sunrise, right? There's sunrise. And I liken that to the time period in our life where we actually become awakened, where life is actually given, where it becomes alive and you can feel it and you can sense it and all of these things, when life actually becomes alive. And as the fetus, if we're talking just about a fetus, as the fetus goes up and it grows into the womb. And then, the fetus, of course, your stomach starts to drop and things like that when you're getting ready to give birth. So I understand. And it comes through the tubes and out of the vaginal canal and literally bringing forth life. And do you understand the amazingness of what the ancient Kemetics knew? First of all, if you guys understand that ancient Kemet was called the Black Land. It's modern day Egypt, but it was called Kemet, or the Black Land. This is where we get chemistry, chemistry, alchemy. And alchemy is nothing more than the ability to transmute energy. And think about it, black folks, black women. We always we always talk about being able to turn nothing into something, right? That's because we are alchemists. We have the ability to transmute income. I'm sorry, that too. But the ability to transmute energy. So we have the ability to take pig intestines and make chitlins. Not that I would suggest eating chitlins, but I'm saying, you understand my point. We have the ability to take scraps and make it into a gourmet meal because we are alchemists. And that is our superpower. But we've forgotten it. That's our superpower. And I'm not just talking about food. I'm talking about in everything. In everything, we have the ability to take life, to take a seed and make it into another human being. Now, folks, if you guys follow science or anything like that, you understand that when you are born as a woman, you are born with all of the eggs you will ever have in your lifetime. Think about that. What that means is when your mother was carrying you, she was also carrying your grandchildren. Mind blown, right? Mind blown. So this is what I mean when I talk about the power of DNA. And so when we talk about having generational trauma in our life, that is passed down in our DNA. Because DNA is like a computer code, right? It's zeros and ones, right? It's a series of computer codes that are able to be hacked and compromised and damaged and upgraded. You can literally upgrade your DNA by changing the level of toxicity in your life, the level of toxicity that you allow in your sacred space, in your sacred space, right? In your mind, in your ears, in your brain, in your body. You know, all of these things allow us to transmute energy. Maybe I do need to talk about transmuting income, which is why I keep saying it. But you have the ability to do that. And this is why there's always been this push to make us forget who we are, that we are sacred beings with all of these amazing superpowers that we use against each other, though. We use them against each other instead of on ourselves to better ourselves. And sisters, you are amazing and you are divine. You are special because that's who you were created to be. You know, if you guys remember, several years ago, they were looking for what they called the Eve gene. Basically, where did the first woman, who was the first woman? And the thing I find fascinating about that is because, of course, it they found, as makes sense, whoever she was from the continent. She had to be, because chemistry, the black lands, alchemy, algebra, you know, all of these things work together, folks. So sometimes we got to remember to pay attention to what it is that we're actually saying. And, you know, like I always talk about, there is a reason that we are the only people that can produce in multiple shades, because we have a dominant gene. And I'm not saying this to spread hatred and racism and fear and division, because that's not what this is about at all. That's not what I'm about. But it's understanding who you are. And if you understand that you are Eve, you are the mother of the earth, then that means that all the children of the earth are your children. They all came from you. All of them. Black, white, Asian, they all came from you. And so we got to take some responsibility for how our children are being raised, how our children have been raised, because we are the earth mothers, full stop. Don't believe me? Look at science. Look at history. Read some stuff. Do some research. Don't take what I say. Read some stuff. I guarantee you will understand what I'm saying to you. And so there's no room for hatred and division, because we are when we say we are everything, we are literally everything. We are everything. And so we got to take responsibility for what we've allowed to transpire in our families, in our communities, in our lives, in our wombs, because it really does all start with you, because that's where all life started, right? It all starts with you. And I'm not saying this in terms of beat yourself up about, you know, you own all this responsibility. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is use your superpower. All of the darkness that we've experienced as women, whether it be incest, rape, domestic violence, sexual assault, whatever it may be, the only way that you overcome is that you are no longer triggered by the pain of that situation. And I've talked about that before here on the show, as I've also talked about transmuting energy. But it's the same thing. It's actually facing the darkness. First of all, not being afraid of the darkness. You know what they tell you to be afraid of the dark. Be afraid of the dark, right? Don't be afraid of the dark. You are the dark. You are the dark. Don't be afraid of it. You are the chemistry, the black land. Don't be afraid of your shadow. Look at your shadow and understand that it's just a shadow, right? It's not who you are. It's just a shadow. And once you realize that, you can walk forward and know that that shadow is not the real you. It's a reflection of you, but it's not the real you. Do you understand what I'm saying, sisters? We got to understand the power that we have, because this isn't about blaming black men or blaming white people. It's not about that. But it is me, Tisha Hillman, saying and understanding I am the darkness. Does that mean that I created all of the darkness, all of the bad things that happen? No. But what it does mean is that because I am the darkness, I can absorb that darkness and transmute it into light. So even though that darkness may be inside of me, what comes out of me is light because I took it in and I made it positive energy so that it can reflect something positive as opposed to looking at it and saying, "You're a victim, girl. Oh, girl, that's so sad. You're a victim. You should feel like this. You should feel." No, let no one else determine your outcome because you are the alchemist. You are the computer programmer. You have the ability to change your DNA by changing your mind, by changing your thoughts, by changing your actions, by changing what you put into your temple. You have that ability. We all do. And it's time that we use it not only to help ourselves, but it's the understanding that helping you saves your children. Because no more than if you as a mother was, uh, doing meth, snorting coke, drinking, you would understand that if you were pregnant, there's a very big possibility that you may not be able to hold on to your child. In the same way, if you are putting things into your body that create death, then how do you get life from that? How do you get life from death unless you absorb it and transmute that? And so, my sisters, there is a reason that modern day gynecology was based, or it came about through our suffering. It came about because a doctor decided to experiment on black women to figure out how the reproductive system works. And who better to use than black women, right? Without anesthesia. Because remember, it's always been said that we can endure more pain because we're not like the other humans. We're different. And so it's always believed that we can endure more pain. And that thought and that belief system has permeated throughout history. And now it's become this thing where we've now internalized and we now believe that we have to do it all and we have to be all and we have to. That's not what I mean when I say this. It's not about taking on all the pains and ills of the world per se, um, because you're still a person and you still feel like everybody else. And so all I'm saying is understand who you are. Understand that there is a reason that eugenics, which is essentially mass forced genocide. Um, I remember being in law school and learning about eugenics in the state of North Carolina, where doctors were actually having black women come into the office and were giving them forced hysterectomies. Why would you do that to anyone, right? And think about just throughout the course of history, what has been done has always followed black folks. Like not saying that other races of people have not endured some terrible, terrible things, but there's a pattern here. And go with me here. There's a pattern here. And all I'm saying is to look at Henrietta Lacks, to know that she died over 50 years ago and that her cells are literally still healing people from cancer and AIDS and all of these things that they say, are terminal, but, don't get me started on medicine. But her cells are literally used to heal the sick today, and she's been dead for 50 years. Don't tell me there's not something special about the DNA that we possess. So use that information to not make you arrogant, but to walk with a different swagger. And the swagger of understanding who you are. Because that's where this all starts. And remembering that DNA is just like a quantum computer that has all the codes and the files and all the things that we need for our individual systems to function. But you are the hacker. You can actually hack your own system. And so in order to do that, we got to change things, because I always say that nothing changes if nothing changes. We cannot expect health when we do things that promote dis-ease. We cannot expect life when we literally consume death, either visually, in our ears, in our wombs, in our diet, whatever it is. We cannot expect to reproduce life from death. And so I implore you to just remember that. And also think about Sarah Bartman. I'm not sure if we have the photo here, but throughout history, our bodies have been objectified. And if you guys are familiar with, because I don't know how to pronounce her African name, um, sorry, I don't know. I'm gonna completely mess it up. But you can. Oh, here we go. And you guys have probably seen this photograph before, but they've referred to her as the Hottentot Venus. And so, as you can see here in this photo, you have a black woman who has a big ass, like a lot of us do, and these men that are staring about, just ogling at her body while she's on display. And you got to understand, whether it be from mental manipulation, eugenics, whatever it may be, there's always been this emphasis on black women and black people in general being objects, being able to be described and defined as objects. Because when you reduce a person to a thing, it allows you to justify your treatment of them as property, right? Because it sounds bad to say, I'm going to own people, right? But if you can mentally convince yourself that this isn't a person, this is a thing, then you can make laws that say it's okay to treat them as chattel, for they are nothing more than property, like livestock. Three-fifths human, right? Understand the history of all of this stuff, sisters, because it goes back to you. Because if you can convince the black woman that her womb is trash, she will allow you to have sex with her, to beat it. She will allow you to spit on it. You wouldn't even spit in somebody's face because it's a sign of disrespect. But we allow people to spit on it, to beat it up, to use these violent and aggressive sounding terms to describe what should be a sacred experience, because it has the ability to create life and to bring forth life. But when we are allowing our sacred space to be disrespected, disregarded, diseased, that is what happens. And so I think about how many black women have fibroids. I had fibroids, and I think about 6 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, I had fibroid surgery. I had 3 fibroids, and I know that most sisters out here can relate to this. But I had 3 fibroids removed, and I had to have a myomectomy. And I know that my sisters are familiar with this. So basically what that means is, because of the placement of the fibroids, and the fact that my uterus was tilted, is inverted, right? And that's another story that we'll talk about. But because of those things, I had to have effectively a C-section. And so what the doctor said is that if I ever got pregnant, I could not have a natural birth. I would have to always have a C-section because of this. Now, here's the thing about that. We can say that it's just, the luck of the draw. But when there are things that are consistent, that tells a story. 1, 2, that's an anomaly. But when it is a large percentage of the people, that's a pattern. And so most of my friends, just like most of my friends have been molested or abused, most of them have had fibroids. Some have had to have hysterectomies, some have had myomectomies, but at the end of the day, guess what happens? Most of the time, the fibroids come back because we don't understand what causes these things. And I'm telling you, sisters, it is allowing toxins into your body in any form. In any form. Because think about it. Your body literally conspires to keep you alive every single day. It conspires to keep you alive. And so what happens is, when your body When a toxin or a unfamiliar substance, a foreign substance is entered into your body, what happens? Histamine. Your body sends out alert signals and like, hey, there's something going on here. Inflammation, right? The alerts go off to say, hey, something's wrong here. This is not foreign. This is not organic to my system, and it's not organic to my DNA. My body's rejecting this. And so if this is happening and we feed it and we force feed our bodies and our systems and our wombs and our minds, all of these things, what is the result? Dis-ease, disease. Like I said before, disease is nothing more than dis-ease in the spirit. And this is why I talk so much about healing, because I realize that we have a lot of childhood traumas. We have a lot of wounds in our DNA strands. A lot. Like, even if you just think about the wounds that came from slavery alone, all of that passed down generation after generation after generation. And it's passed down through every generation so that we can eventually heal. And here we are. And so I know that I've talked a lot about a lot of deep things today. I know you guys thought I was going to just talk about sex, and it gets deep. But the seeds that I hope to plant in the minds of anyone that listens to this show are not seeds of division, right? Because when you look at the ankh, or you look at the womb, when a baby is in the womb, the baby's eyes are completely melanated. Not a coincidence. The baby's eyes are completely black, melanated, right? Because that's how we all start out, right? We all start out female, melanated, period. Look it up, right? And I'm not talking about melanated in terms of dark skin, but I'm talking about melanated in terms of there's some aspect of us that is melanated because it's who we are. As human beings, it's who we are. And so some of us have more melanin than others, right? But what I'm saying is, when you are in the womb, there's a period of time that you're blind, right? That you can't see. And what happens is, you a fertile egg has to divide. And so the same thing happens in this physical reality, right? There's times that our spirit has to divide. Or no, let me rephrase that. Doesn't have to, but it's what happens as a part of just this earth school that we live on. Because we're here to learn and to observe and all of these things. But at the end of it all, to come full circle, we have to remember how we all started out. We all began the exact same way, as formless, shapeless, melanated women in the womb, until we were birthed and life was given to us, light was given to us, right? And we were exposed to the light, to the physical reality. And sisters, I know that I've given you a lot of information, but understand that the seeds that I hope to plant are not those of division or the death of vision, division, right? But it's enlightenment, and it's enveloping. It's understanding that the half has to become the whole. The whole, right? You guys get where I'm going with this, right? You have to go back to the whole. It all starts with the whole, folks. You want to talk about sex? It starts with the whole. Life starts with the whole. And then what happens is we're divided. We're divided by gender, by race, by, whatever may be. But we have to go back to the whole and remember who we are. And sisters, this information is to remind you, like I said, to walk with the swagger of 100 or 1,000 lions. And as a Leo, I love this. But walk with the swagger of 1,000 lions. And you guys know that a group of lions, a pack of lions, is called a pride. There's a reason that the Bible says that the pride comes before the fall. Because you can walk with the swagger of 1,000 lions, but you realize that the force that you have, you may be powerful in and of yourself, and you are, but you are stronger as a pack. And your pride should come by virtue of being a part of the whole. Because individually, it's easy to step out from the pride and think that it's all about you. And when you do that, that's nothing more than your ego, your shadow, right? It's your shadow. It's what lags behind you. But as a collective, it's your pride. And so I challenge you as sisters, to go back to your pride, to find your pride, to find your pride, the pride in your community, the pride in yourself, the pride in our men, the pride in our children. Go back to the whole. Return to Ma'at. Ma'at means balance, harmony. Return to that. Because anything outside of that is just our ego. Anything that causes division and separation is ego. And pride comes before the fall. Pride comes before the ego, right? Pride. So think about it. Pride. The pack is going to come before that one single lion. And you got to put the pack before you put yourself, because that is what we do as Earth Mothers. Remember that. And always remember, sisters, if you don't have your own tribe, if you don't have your own pride or pack, reach out to other people. Reach out to other sisters. Hell, reach out to me. You can email me at tisha@returntomaat.com. I would love to form a sacred circle of sacred women. If you've read this book, you understand what I mean when I say the sacred circle. Because we need one another. Life is hard as hell. Life is hard. We need each other. And like I always say, sis, you don't have to carry all the bags that you've been given. Realize that even though you are a magical being, you can't be magical by your damn self, right? It's about the pack. Find your pride. Find your sense of pride. And I thank you for allowing me to share this information with you. Anyone that receives this information, even if it helps or inspires one person, then I've done my job. But I hope that we can get to a place as a community, as a, because it starts with, that's our pack, right? And then to, the larger community, right? The world, whatever it may be, the country. But it starts with our pack, because that's our sense of pride. And if we've taken that away, it's time that we rebuild it. And we cannot do that without our men. We cannot do that without our men. Simply put, there is no seed to be planted without your men. So as we tell our little boys these lies, remember what you're doing. You're planting a seed in his mind to tell him that he's not wanted or needed. Because if you're telling that to his father, you're telling that to him too. If you're telling your little girl that R. Kelly's music matters, so it doesn't matter that he's a sexual predator, what are you telling that little girl who's too scared to tell you that her uncle touched her? What are you saying? What seeds are you planting? If you're calling your daughters bitches and hoes, and you're calling their mothers bitches and hoes, and you're treating them as if they're fungible, disposable objects, what seeds are you planting in the minds of your little girl? We got to choose our actions very carefully and choose our words very carefully, because we are powerful co-creators of this thing called life. And our words create worlds and they cast spells. That's why it's called spelling. Always remember that. But until next week, folks, go deep. Go deep and go hard. And I thank you guys for tuning in. I will see you next week, 11 o'clock, and hopefully we can pick up this conversation. Thanks so much.